The score for Dawn Dusk is very acoustic instruments, but very orchestral. So violins, cellos, viola. So it's very based in this classical world, but more of a modern approach.
Yo. Bingo.
We're ready for him. I love instruments. I collect them, and I have tons, and I try and learn how to play all of them. I'm a bit obsessed, but I don't always use the same ones on scores. I try and listen to what the movie is telling me through the visuals and through the story, and think about what instruments would best help tell that story. So if it's a very human story like Dawn Dusk with a lot of complex emotions, I will probably pick more organic and acoustic instruments to help tell that story, because there's a humanity tied into that. And the way I record those instruments, I want to hear that it's a person playing it, like the fingers on the strings, or maybe the valves opening and closing. Like, you want to hear all that so that the listener subconsciously knows that there's a human involved, and you get that human emotion.
And I've had this bass since 1970. It was a Christmas gift from my parents. Take it for you.
Do you need anything out of here? Okay. Collaborating on Dawn Dusk was awesome because the directors came over. I would write music and send it to them, and they would listen to it and think about it in their own time and make notes and come in, and then we would work together. It's a very nuanced story. Moving a couple of notes can change a mood entirely, and if you hit it a little too hard with the music, it can ruin the whole thing. So it's a very delicate dance with the music to give it the right voice, and it was something that myself and the directors really worked on together to get just the right voice.
Oh, so the timing on some of these, like I was writing what, I enter on and all these.
It's interesting because you don't know going into a project what the level of collaboration will be, if you'll be treated more like a collaborator or more like a craftsman who can do your job. And that actually reminds me of something Shelley says in the movie. She talks about making something beautiful but also still functional. And I think it's something that resonated with me, was that sort of intersection of functionality and beauty. Gorgeous. That sounds gorgeous. Thank you.
Solid.
I think that was great. Let's move on. I definitely have lots of favorite cues from this movie. One that jumps to mind is the opening, because once I wrote it, it kind of just poured out. It was a beautiful opening scene, and the music needed to feel like it was lifting you up and preparing you for something gorgeous and special and fragile. And I feel like I nailed that, if I may say so. When she travels to Italy, there's a real shift in the film and a change of tone. And so I was able to incorporate, along with the classical instruments we're using, just a little bit of instrumentation to sort of indicate you're in Italy. So just a little bit of accordion, just a little bit of mandolin, not anything to sound stereotypical, but just enough to hint and say, hey, you're in Italy, just vaguely in the background. So that was fun. I love playing accordion and mandolin. Audio playback's having a hard time because we have so much going on in this track.
Yeah.
I think Pink in the Sky was probably the most complex because it was, at first listen, it's relatively simple. It's like a repeating piano and it just builds to the end, if you want to simplify it. But there's so many layers of sounds going on in there and instruments coming in and growing together. It was an interesting challenge, and if you were to open up the session and listen to all the different layers, sometimes there's a guitar that flutters in and you would never know it was there. Sometimes there's electronic sounds that come in, and you'd never know it was there, but it just keeps it interesting and keeps it from becoming stale. Okay, friends with leather?
Okay.
You want to do high or low first?
Let's do high first.
Gotcha. 1 bar. One of my favorite scenes to score ended up being when she's super excited at the leather shop because we had struggled with that scene and I had scored it a couple different ways and it wasn't quite right. And so, we kept talking about what it needed to be, and I scrapped everything and was like, let me just start over, it's easier. They said something that reminded me of Debussy, and I started reading about his techniques and how he scored and things that, the musical techniques that he employed. There's very low piano notes, and then there's these cascading high piano lines, some harp, strings, and they're all sort of trading back and forth. And it goes through most of the piece. There's this very low, warm bottom, and then this very floaty, sort of fun, dreamy but excited and joyful top end where those instruments are doing that. The top end was representing, of course, her joy at discovering leather as her favorite thing to work with. I was really having fun with it because it felt like something I'd never really done before. For me, it felt very new, like I wasn't repeating any ideas or anything like that. It was just a very new piece of music for me, but also it worked really well, I thought, with the picture, and fortunately, Jason and Blue felt so too. And so that became one of my favorite pieces of music in Dawn Dusk, Friends with Leather. I hope that after listening to the score of Dawn Dusk that the audience member feels uplifted. To me, the film is about a journey of a woman, and more importantly, a human that I think a lot of us could project our own struggles and experiences on. Her story has some extreme ups and downs, human struggle and transcendence. If I reflected that journey properly in the score, you're gonna feel it just by listening. It's full of beauty, and it's something that you'll walk away from feeling more full inside as a human.